Now this is a stand site that we have picked out for this water hole. And just one thing to note, it doesn't look like there's a lot of cover up there. A lot of times they go to a client property and they have to be in this giant tree, and you know, you don't need that much cover to hide yourself. The thing is, you just can't move. The deer are not coming into a food source. Up in Michigan, a lot of bait hunters in northern Michigan, the deer get very wary around a bait pile because they're always looking up in the trees. They expect movement, they expect human scent, they expect people to be here. We hunt a stand like this 3 or 4 times throughout the entire season. We have a lot of other good setups on the property, and we'll detail some of those in the future. But we're only about 20 yards off this water hole. But again, what makes this work is down below me is where these deer come from. They're coming down, and this is a great time to illustrate this. We're out here in early February. We have a snow's off the trees, so you can see the lay of the land. But those deer come from below me. They come up at an angle typically, come up through the water, or they just continue on to the food source. And what happened was I shot a real nice buck, a nice 5-year-old this year with my bow, and he was actually coming from the west behind those oak leaves over there. And I came in here afternoon and kicked out a pile of deer. I saw some antlers, lots of does and fawns, and they're in around this water. And I thought, boy, my hunt's ruined. But I didn't want to mess up the rest of the property. I really was excited to sit in the stand for the first time for the year. And so I got into the stand, and about 45 minutes before dark, one of the main bucks you were after on the property came from down that run, and I really don't believe he was coming to the water. I think he was here because of the scent, because of all the activity of the does and fawns, other bucks in there, and he might have been one of those bucks that was here earlier when I walked into the stand. But he was coming from the west. He was simply cruising through on that lower trail. That lower trail is only about 22, 23 yards below the stand here. And again, it wasn't so much that he had to come into that water, but that water created that activity. The water's in a location where if a buck feels wary about the water tank, he can actually go around it. And he came down, offered a perfect shot. My wind's blowing uphill in the evening with a stiff southwest breeze. I didn't know I was there, and he made it about 60, 70 yards. But the key is, again, wind's blowing up to an open area of the woods where our approach is at. We have a lot of down timber we can walk in behind to get into here where we're not spooking deer, especially in the morning. And those deer, this is just a natural location for them to make it from bedding to feeding, which really is probably well over 100 yards, probably about 125, 150 yards in that range from where we're at right here. So we're well back from that edge. There's actually a thick edge up along the field where the food plot is. We actually get a little bit of doe bedding up in that area. And that's what you'd call more of a staging area. I really don't like to hunt the staging areas too much, simply for the fact that a lot of times staging areas double as doe bedding areas. The worst thing you can do is walk into a doe bedding area / staging area before evening and expect a buck to come into that area after you've already pushed the does out of it. Might have a lot of rubs, might have a lot of scrapes. I'd rather be behind that staging area on a real secure, well-used, secure travel corridor, one that's not spooked by people. We don't walk down here at all. This is free reign for those deer all the way from here to their bedding areas. We never get into that. We try to never let our scent get in there, our sound, never let them see us. But those deer can go from that bedding to the staging area up there. You know, if they could get to that staging area, they might be there 15 minutes or a half hour before dark, set up there, and then go to the food plot. If you're out in that food source, you might never see them. But back here, quite a ways off the wood line where they're going to stage up, is where you have a chance at those bucks. We had a real nice encounter here in the morning last year where I was sitting with a hunting buddy of mine, Rich. That's why you have the double stand up there. And we had a real nice one come in behind us. And it was a buck that was cruising. We happened to be in another stand location when a real big mature buck came to the water hole, probably a 4-year-old. Kind of a cat and mouse game, but you know, we didn't use this stand a lot of times, but boy, a lot of activity when we were here and we weren't here. We get a camera on that water hole, great spot for a camera, and we got a lot of nice buck pictures. We even had them stepping inside the tank. We had fawns playing in the tank. And we just set this up in May of last year, so this isn't something that's been here for years and they're used to. They've never had water in this location, so they get into this water now. It's becoming a part of their daily habit and their daily lives. We had a lot of yearling bucks come in here, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, while we were on stand, and so we're looking forward to hunting this next year. And I hope this makes sense, a little bit of the setup, but we're going to review this with some other stand setups like this, water holes throughout the property. Keep in mind we have about 22 stands on this property. 3 you can shoot to food plots, about 11 or 12 you can shoot to a water hole or around a water hole. So, I place a priority on hunting water holes. Of course, we are in a swamp in the northern Michigan, Wisconsin region. That water wouldn't play as an important role. But when it's dry, we actually have to roll 15-gallon milk jug tanks of water down into the woods to this site. We have to drive to other places. We use Rubbermaid containers, coolers, but we get the water here when we need it. A tank like that is 110 gallons. We bought it at a local feed store. I think it was $65, so not real expensive. It's holding up well in the wintertime too. And we find that if that was full in May, we didn't have to put water in it until the end of September, October, when we hit a little bit of a dry spell. So it held its water for a very long time. We have some smaller tanks and some man-made holes. And this tank in particular, I think because of its depth, we keep these water holes back in the shade. It's very important. You don't want them in the sun and drying out. We dig them in a little bit. That water temperature is a lot cooler than it would be if it was out in the field. So we get water to last here pretty long. I think we added 60 gallons of water to this during the season, mostly during October and November, on 2 separate occasions, maybe 3 separate occasions. It still has water in it in early February. And I know we've had some snow melt and we haven't had a lot of snow this year, so it's holding its water pretty well, and I hope you enjoy the setup.